Okay, so there's no denying that something strange is going on with Nintendo Switch Online, because for the first time since Nintendo launched this service back in 2018, we are seeing them run some kind of large-scale play test that they, of course, have communicated. The sign-up period for that has now come and gone. It really finished in about 2 seconds if you were trying to get into that program yourself online. I was fortunate enough to get in, but it seemed like a luck of the draw situation. Anyway, we don't know what Nintendo's planning, but we do have some interesting details about that playtest program, such as the file size being a 2.2 gigabyte download. They don't want people to discuss this online, but nobody's signing an NDA, so obviously you know how that's going to end up, and we know we're going to get more info on it as of the 20th of this month. Well, interestingly, while all of the theories online are speculating maybe this is a games streaming service, maybe this is some kind of GameCube test ahead of time, because maybe the online component portion of GameCube games is more involved and Nintendo needs to get a large group of players together to kind of roll this out effectively before they officially launch GameCube. And we also know that the 25th of October is the annual renewal date for a ton of users for the expansion pack, because that's when Nintendo launched the service. Well, while all that is flying around online, we have some concrete shipping data. This is not leaks or insiders talking. This is publicly verifiable information coming to us from FamiBoards user LIC. And you might remember before we talked about Nintendo is ordering large quantities for assembly of something that absolutely resembles a GameCube controller, with the exact motor rumble piece that is in there, with the exact shell and hardware of the buttons. And while all of these different components have certain code names that you have to line up with previous Nintendo product history to uncover, you can make a discovery that yes, this is almost certainly a GameCube controller. And why would Nintendo mass manufacture a GameCube controller in their warehouse right now? And you probably know the answer to that, because with every major new Nintendo Switch Online home console that they have released so far, not including obviously Game Boy and Game Boy Advance or portable consoles, we didn't get controllers for those. Every other one that is a home console, we get that same system controller with a wireless connectivity upgrade, and it's manufactured straight from Nintendo. I mean, just look at this beautiful N64 controller that was manufactured back in 2021 with a joystick that does not completely lay loose because it hasn't been used that much. So you know that it's nice to get some of these classic throwback controllers, and a lot of people try to buy them when they are live, and Nintendo would obviously do something like this if they were planning on adding GameCube into the equation. So we're going to get on the same page with exactly what was discovered here. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And the long and short of the post that has been shared over on FamiBoards, which I cannot share directly with a screen capture, unfortunately, I will have a link to the website in the description down below. You have to be a registered user with FamiBoards to read some of their posts. It's a silly rule, but they won't let you share it outside of there. But you can go verify this information yourself. But the long and short of it is that there is a ton of different controller components that are linked to GameCube controller pieces of hardware, or at the very least, this is a new wireless controller that is not a Pro controller. Now, are they going to release a Virtual Boy controller and that's what this is? There's like a small possibility, but everybody who's reviewed this data seems to be on the same page with the general consensus that this is likely a wireless NSO GameCube controller. Now, something that is interesting besides that shipping data that hit the internet, which is 100% out there and verifiable, is this 19.0.0 firmware update, where Nintendo did actually rebuild every single component of the Nintendo Switch firmware, which is actually just a standard run-of-the-mill thing when you do a full big number change, and it's not necessarily indicative of a bunch of new features for us end users, as was pointed out by Oatmeal Dome, but it does mean that there could be a lot of changes baked in behind the scenes that data miners have tried to uncover. And we have had some pretty interesting reports from Necro Felipe, who does run Nintendo Universo, and he said from Switch Brew, essentially a website that does go through and data mine all these things in detail, that he's expecting a lot of different features to be overhauled entirely, such as the way you interact with friends online, something to do with the home screen, the storage, and even the way the operating system of the hardware can handle simultaneous content downloads from things like the eShop. So it's a pretty fleshed out update. We just don't know when any of this might actually be enabled. We've seen Nintendo do updates in the past and then things get enabled further on down the line, such as the Bluetooth enabled thing for headset that happened. Like, we didn't have Bluetooth connectivity in the Switch for the longest time when it comes to being able to connect to headsets, and then one day that was just enabled with an update. Like, there's some interesting correlations in this 19.0.0 update that don't seem to be live right now, but at the OS level seem to have been changed. So one of the more interesting reports that's coming out of this update that is tied directly to GameCube is that there are numerous users online that are claiming and even sharing clips of them playing with brand new issues with the GameCube controller adapter that was sold for Smash Bros, where you can hook up your GameCube controllers and use them on your Switch. If you have one of those, you might want to test it out post 19.0.0 update. It doesn't appear to be affecting everyone, but there is a large chunk of people online that are saying they're now having issues with how the controller is registering those controllers, and some people are having to restart the units. Other ones are sharing clips of them controlling 2 characters in Smash Bros when they only have one plugged in. Like, something was changed in the OS level, and it could be unrelated, but it's funny that the timing around it. We're seeing shipping data for GameCube controllers. There's a new system update that we don't know what's baked in there for 19.0.0 yet, and it's a major system component change, and now all of a sudden GameCube adapters for the wired controllers are suddenly messing up for a lot of users, and there's no rhyme or reason to why. And we have this Nintendo Switch Online playtest program that people have signed up for, and we're going to learn more info on the 20th. There's a lot of different things that are lining up here that are just interesting, not confirmation, but more proof, I would say, that GameCube is indeed headed to Nintendo Switch Online sometime soon. Now, if it is related to this playtest or not is kind of a separate deal in my opinion. It might be, it might not be, but what we do know about that 2.2 gigabyte file size is that it's likely not a streaming client, because you just wouldn't simply need that much space for something like a streaming client. So this could have a few different games via emulation baked into it to test out. Now, a lot of people will stop you and say, wait a minute, GameCube games are 1.3 to 1.4 gigabyte file size range, and that's actually the full size of the GameCube disc. What you might not realize, unless you've done a little bit of research into it, is that a lot of the files on that disc are not needed for the game at all, but they're rather just essentially space fillers for the disc to take up the entire file size of the disc. Not every GameCube game is exactly that 1.3 to 1.4 gigabytes in file size. In fact, they're significantly smaller than that if you actually just look at the game files themselves, scrub them out of the ISO, and I'm assuming Nintendo would be able to do that for their own emulation service that's in-house from them for the GameCube. So if that is the case, I'm assuming there could be 1, 2, or maybe even as much as 3 or 4 GameCube games baked into this thing to test out and play with online with other players. Like, I'm thinking that that's what would be going on here. Nintendo's going to be testing the servers for how some of the multiplayer GameCube games that they release function online. Imagine if we got Melee like out of the gate as part of this online playtest, and we're playing literally one of the best Smash Bros, like second to Ultimate, because Ultimate's obviously the best, but the mechanics and the throwback, oh my gosh, how many hours I put into Melee, more than anything else, getting all the trophies and everything that game had to offer. I mean, thousands of hours put into it. Absolutely would love to see Melee with online support, but we don't even have Smash 64, so I'm not getting my hopes super high up for this, but I do think that there's a lot of interesting new data that does point me more into the direction of thinking that this might be some kind of GameCube playtest. And if that is the case, I do believe we will get a official announcement from Nintendo before this drops as the playtest, because I don't think they're going to unveil it that way and expect players not to talk about it. I think that the logical conclusion is that they would have to make some kind of announcement between now and then. Whether or not that's tied into a Switch 2 reveal or not is totally up for debate and speculation, but we could also just have a Nintendo Direct Mini or a mainline Direct in the month of October, and that's where they reveal it. But I do think something big is going to be coming with Nintendo Switch Online. In fact, we know it because Nintendo's never done a playtest program before. They're doing it right now. They're in the month that a lot of annual users will expire on the 25th if they don't have some reason to stick around for the expansion pack. And now we have all of this other supporting data that GameCube might be that much more likely. So let me know in the comments down below if you think we actually will see GameCube launch on Nintendo Switch Online in the end of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, or if you think that that's more likely saved for Switch 2, and that's what the shipping data is. It's pointing to Nintendo maybe having GameCube ready to go for the next gen console, where we get that on store shelves sometime next year. I'm thinking early next year, and maybe we learn about GameCube at something like the February Direct. And if you just had to put your money on what feature you think Nintendo is playtesting as part of this NSO playtest, what do you think it is? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll I'll see you guys in the next video.